Hello, everyone. We appreciate that you all have taken the time to join us today. My name is Rakesh Vazirani, and I have the pleasure of being the host for our first webinar in the series AskADetoXpert. The focus of today's session will be with regards to conformance to the recently released ZDHC MRSL 2.0. As we start off, a couple of housekeeping points. The first one, the slides being used today will be available for download after the webinar. And the second aspect being, depending on whether you are joining from a mobile phone or a computer, you'll be able to see widgets or buttons that can be resized. These can be used to access the speaker profile to look at the resources, but also importantly to type in your questions, which we'll be addressing during and after the webinar. As we start off, let's have a short look at who are our fellow participants today. With the chart on the left, we see that we have participants representing various stakeholders from the textile industry. It's of course especially relevant for chemical manufacturers whose production processes and products will have to be reassessed because of a change to MRSL, but also brands and retailers who might have to reassess their product finishes based on the substances in MRSL. Finally, it's relevant for the Tier 2 mills who will be using these chemical products and hence might need to reassess and screen their chemical inventory. With the chart on the right, we see that we have the privilege of having participants from multiple regions. So, konnichiwa, ni hao, xin chao, namaste, salam, merhaba, and guten morgen. To take us through the journey today, we have with us Mr. Stefan Tumpner, based out of our office in Germany. He heads our Technical Competence Center for Basic Materials. This team analyzes chemical formulations for safety and compliance. In addition to being a state-certified chemist, he gained his experience while working with German market surveillance authorities, followed by his work with quality management team for a German retailer, where he frequently engaged with suppliers in Asia to ensure safety and compliance of the finished product. After he started work with the Rhineland office in Shenzhen, he moved to Hong Kong before finally settling in Berlin. We also have with us Dr. An, based out of our office in Vietnam, where he leads our softlines team. After he completed his doctorate in Sweden, Dr. Han has been involved with sound management of chemicals for over 25 years across various diverse industry sectors that cover textile, shoes, but also food and furniture. Both Stefan and An are also active trainers within ZDHC Academy. And myself, based in Hong Kong, our global team engages with companies to assess and enable progress towards their sustainability goals. We'll go through today's webinar in 3 sections. So let's start off looking at the big picture about the chemical industry's risks and opportunities and connections with the textile industry. Here's what we understand with regards to what matters most to the chemical industry and its stakeholders. We'll touch upon aspects related to environmental management of production process and assessment of sustainability credentials for the chemical products. It's no surprise that the chemicals industry is one of the most regulated industries, and its environment continues to grow more complex. While effective risk management is not easy, it is top priority for a safe and sustainable chemicals industry. Now, the risks for a chemical manufacturing site are affected by several factors like the chemicals being produced, the safety equipment and training, the resilience mechanisms, the management systems that have been put in place, the location of the site, incident reporting and handling, and other mechanisms. It's here that our multidisciplinary global team has a 4-pillar approach, focusing on operation safety via trainings and asset integrity, focusing on the emissions concerning air, water, and waste. Thirdly, looking at resource efficiency in terms of energy usage, water usage, and material flow. And finally, on chemical product safety assessments and screenings as per REACH, as per ZDHC MRSL and others. The overall objective of the work of our team is to enable the chemical manufacturers' plans for a safer product, a safer production process, and efficient use of resources. As Mr. Linus Pauling famously said, chemistry is wonderful, and every aspect of our world today is affected by chemistry. The focus of today's content will be related to the chemical industry's fifth largest customer group. That's the fashion industry. It's amazing that the range, the color and texture of fabrics that we enjoy is down to, on one hand, the ingenuity of the manufacturer, but also to the chemicals being used. Within the textile industry, we've seen since the early 90s that focus has been on safety and compliance of finished products, the garments, with the so-called RSL or restricted substances list. But in the past few years, there has been increased emphasis on production processes and input chemistry, which is governed by MRSL or the Manufacturing Restricted Substances list. And this is exactly what we'll be looking deeper into. As we talk about MRSL, let's take a moment to appreciate the degree of complexity that exists in the textile industry. While we often hear the term supply chain, many of us would have experienced firsthand that it's an interconnected web instead of a chain. Increasingly important are the chemical manufacturers that manufacture advanced, sophisticated chemical ingredients that give our garments the desired performance and finish. Within the practice of effective chemical management, we view the ZDHC MRSL as the brain of the entire system, which guides and governs the overall program. It has impacts for the chemical manufacturer, for the tier 2 mills in the way they utilize these chemical products, for brands and retailers so as to decide the function and performance features of garments that could be impacted, but also for the assessment organizations like ours that analyze chemical products and wastewater for conformance. As we see, it all started off with demands from NGO that any kind of MRSL go beyond the legal requirements, that it be widely adopted, and that it be ambitious. This then led to major brands, retailers, and also associations like the Textile Partnership in Germany adopting the MRSL requirements with clear targets. Naturally, then, the MRSL also made its way within verification and audit programs like the Hague FEM, the Amphori BPI, and GOTS. It's also listed as criteria for eco-labels like Blue Angel and Green Button. What we've seen so far is the customer and the demand side for MRSL conformance from the perspective of brands, eco-labels, and NGOs. That leaves us now with open questions like what exactly has changed with the MRSL 2.0, whether it will change again, who decides the change, and how are these changes evaluated. Then we also have questions like what the ecosystem for MRSL looks like, who will end up using it, how will or how it can be used by mills and brands. These are exactly the kind of questions that my colleague Mr. Stefan Tumpner will address. Stefan, if you could please enlighten us.
Also, good morning and good afternoon from my side. In this next chapter, I would like to speak about ZDHC Manufacturing Restricted Substances List version 2.0 and the relevant changes. As you all know that the MRSL is applicable to chemical products from the textile and leather production. Here we have chemical product classes like solvents, cleaners, paints, inks, auxiliaries. This is just only a small overview about different applications. With the new version 2, the MRSL list not only covers textiles and leather anymore, but also synthetics and polymers, including rubber, foam, and adhesives. Additionally, ZDHC has implemented subchapters like the ZDHC MRSL candidate list or the archive. Similar to the SVHC list under REACH, stakeholders can propose chemical substances meeting the criteria to be included into the upcoming version of the MRSL. One chemical which might be relevant for you is formaldehyde. I would like to show you a little bit more about MRSL candidate list later in my presentation. Another new subchapter is the MRSL archive. The MRSL archive includes substances which have been previously used in the production and now are no longer in use. The biggest impact and most significant change from my point of view relates to the MRSL substances. The second version of the MRSL includes not only updates on technical nature as said before, but adds more than 60 new chemicals to the MRSL list. These are chemicals like MCCP, bisphenol A, quinoline, but also new substance classes like UV absorber, antimicrobial and biocides. Additionally, there have been changes made to the current substances lists like flame retardant, halogenated solvents or PFC, where more than 50 substances have been added overall. The new list of the MRSL version 2 includes now 210 different substances. During the last years, ZDHC and its members made huge effort establishing guidelines and creating very useful documents supporting the implementation of MRSL. Some of the documents you can see here. The latest documents, by the way, are available for free on the ZDHC homepage. Together with the chemical module of ZDHC Gateway, this builds a comprehensive holistic approach for the import management. With the latest information we received here from March 2020, there have been counted more than 950 chemical formulator accounts and around 35,000 chemical products in the chemical module of Gateway. We can see here a significant raise within the last year. Before, the numbers have been quite low, but since 2019 and 2020 now the numbers are getting much higher, and we know that the numbers will be more than this, as there are different chemical formulators now assessing the products and adding them to the chemical gateway. In case you're not familiar with MRSL and RSL, so RSL sometimes is also called PRSL, which is the Product Restricted Substances List, I would like to take a short look at this too. Sometimes you will hear the phrase clean input, clean output. So no restricted chemical goes in, which means no restricted chemical goes out. We know that there are rare occasions where it is possible that new chemicals will be created by reacting of two existing chemicals. But this is really rarely, and I also will not like to talk about this here in detail. However, there is a close connection between the MRSL and the RSL, both used for managing restricted substances. So the MRSL for the manufacturing process and the RSL for the finished product. There's often some misunderstanding from my point of view. The confusion between MRSL and RSL and when to use them. One thing in common for both lists, as said, is they include similar chemicals. So both may be used for testing purposes. So there are differences between them. MRSL provides manufacturers, suppliers with acceptable limits in the chemical formulation, like solvents, inks, dyes, which are used in the material and product manufacturing process. However, the MRSL also applies to other chemicals not directly connected to the production, like cleaners, detergents, or even pest control. The regulation of chemical formulation through the MRSL not only protects the consumer, but more important, it protects the workers and the environment. The RSL is applicable to the finished product or the components. Here we have a clearly impact for the final consumer, and even sometimes because of washing and also for the environment. However, the MRSL is a regulatory compliance tool for the retailers and brands meeting with the global legislations like REACH, POP, CPSIA, or California Proposition 65. In my previous slides, we have been focusing on the MRSL updates and the differences and similarities of MRSL and RSL. So now I think it's necessary also to look at the ZDHC gateway. In ZDHC gateway, we have two main modules. One is the wastewater and the other one is the chemical module. So concerning the MRSL, it's obviously that we have to look at the chemical module. The gateway and here the chemical module is an extensive and widely accessible database for all kinds of brands, suppliers, and chemical producers. So it's necessary also to say that one big advantage of the chemical module is that it is possible to securely submit product data with supplier or clients. To register at the gateway is quite simple, and after everything is done, the product registration is done, and also the verification of the product by a third-party certification standard like TÜV Rheinland. Gateway enables you to submit or to create specific documents. So one document especially important for the chemical producer is the so-called ChemCheck document, so which is a conformity certificate used to prove the conformance of the product to the MRSL. This can be used for sharing to the customers or also for advertising of specific chemical products. On the other hand side, we have the ZDHC InCheck report, which is mainly used from suppliers. This is a standardized chemical inventory report to summarize and access the supplier's input chemical. The InCheck report provides a clear understanding of the suppliers or the facilities' conformance to the MRSL and other key criteria. So how many chemicals have been approved, how many chemicals have been unapproved. So here you can see a good summary about the chemical inventory. This is also quite useful, as the InCheck report can be shared or can be used for reporting to different kind of stakeholders like brands. As said in my previous slides about the connection between RSL and MRSL, I think it's necessary to say that there's also a connection between legal legislations like REACH and wastewater limits. Basically, everything connects to each other. So if something is restricted by law in a finished article, it also has an impact on MRSL and RSL. So therefore, I think it's necessary to look at the processes on how to evaluate and how to assess chemicals. In most cases, the intention for a new restriction of a hazardous chemical is driven, for example, in the European Union by the European Chemical Agency, so-called ECHA, mostly on behalf of the national public authorities, where they can propose substances to be evaluated as SVHC or maybe even under Annex 17 of REACH. So same as the ECHA for evaluating chemicals and potential restrictions under REACH, the ZDHC has implemented also an assessment process before adding chemicals to the MRSL candidate list or even MRSL list. Also, therefore, it's necessary to say that especially the industry should give a proper response on potential candidate list substances. Basically, substances being on the candidate list might not be important to you, but if this candidate list substance becomes an MRSL substance, it could have an impact on your products or maybe even on your production. So I think it's necessary to provide sufficient feedback to ZDHC about substitution possibilities for candidate list substances. As if this will not be done, it could have a future impact on your production, either if you are a chemical formulator, if you are a supplier, or if you are a brand. In the beginning of my presentation, I was talking about changes for MRSL version 2.0 and the new added chemicals here. So on this slide, we can see some potential application for the MRSL substances. Especially looking at the new substances, I think it's necessary to say that for the chemical formulator, this can have or this has a quite big impact. So sure, there is a transitional period applicable from version 1.1 to version 2.0, but it might take some time, as you all know, to develop new chemical formulations or substituting chemicals from the chemical product. So therefore, I think the chemical industry here has some homework to do. Besides this, the effort for compliance assessment becomes even now more relevant, as depending on the kind of assessment, the analytical costs, for example, increasing drastically. So here I'm referring just only to the smart sampling grid, where in the version 1.1 only 1 or 2 tests have been necessary, or 3 tests, and based on version 2.0, which is the new version then, 5, 6, 7 tests or tests on different chemical classes are necessary now. How to assess and how to evaluate chemical formulations, we will see later, and also we will give some quite useful examples here. MRSL candidate list. We have heard this quite a lot in the presentation already, so I would like to take the next slide to have a closer look at the MRSL candidate list. As said in the beginning, it is kind of similar to the SVHC list under REACH. So here, and same as for SVHC list, a stakeholder can propose chemical substances meeting specific criteria to be included in the new version of SVHC or MRSL. The purpose of the candidate list in general is to help the industry by offering visibility over potential future restricted substances, and also give the industry important time to prepare and innovate new chemicals. Maybe this can have different reasons. So maybe there are no safer alternatives available yet. So there need to be a specific time that the industry can adjust and can develop the new chemicals. Looking at the chemical list, as said before, there are well-known chemicals like formaldehyde, PFCs, DMFA, DMFU. So these are somehow at the moment used in the chemical production, in the textile production, leather production. So by adding the chemicals to the MRSL list, there's a possible impact as well. The problem here is we do not have any information which of the substances becoming an MRSL substances. And also there is no indication on the applicable limit. So I guess same as for version 2.0, there will be a new version, maybe it's called 3.0, and there will be hopefully a transitional period for the newly added chemicals. Also, there are questions on what could be another potential candidate list substances. We don't know, but we know that based on some evaluations from ECHA, there are substances evaluated now on a European level, like skin sensitizer listed in Annex 6 of the CLP regulation. However, these are quite a bunch of substances. So what will be the next candidate list? I cannot give you a comment here, but I am looking forward to get more information and then sharing the information with you. In this slide, I would like to go back to the ZDHC chemical gateway. So please note, this is just a proposal from ZDHC, but I think it's quite useful, especially to show you on who can create a formulator account. So for sure, everyone who's manufacturing chemicals, but also everyone which is diluting, renaming, relabeling, or even mixing chemicals. So they all can create a formulator account because there's a reason behind. They need to create a new safety data sheet. If they are following one of these actions, they have to create an own safety data sheet so they can have a third-party certification. Agents or distributors which are only selling or reselling somehow chemical formulations or chemical products cannot have a chemical gateway access. I think it's not really necessary to say that ZDHC in the near future will update this, but I think it's, from my point of view, quite useful to have a look at it and get an idea on which role I'm having here in the supply chain. So therefore also, what can I do with Gateway, and do I need to create a Gateway account? When talking about MRSL, it is also necessary to look into the MRSL conformance level. Level 0 is the lowest level. However, as the level 0 conformance supplier declaration is not possible anymore, as from 31st December 2019, no new level 0 application can be entered in Gateway. Higher conformance level means more extensive review of the chemical formulation and its producers. This we can see by evaluating a product on level 1, which requires a third-party review of the documentation like safety data sheet or technical data sheet, and or an analytical test report compared to level 2 and level 3. Level 2 requires additionally a document review by a third-party certifier of the product stewardship practices of the chemical supplier factory, ensuring that the manufacturing is conducted according to an accepted standard for quality management systems. So demonstrating that they have, for example, appropriate wastewater treatment and waste handling procedures in place, as well as a commitment to workers' health and safety. On top, level 3 requires all elements of level 2 and an on-site audit to for the chemical supplier factory to evaluate the product stewardship firsthand. In the previous slide, I was introducing the conformance level system. As said before, level 2 and level 3 requires a document review, and level 3 additionally an on-site verification audit. In the following slides, we would like to briefly introduce the TÜV Rheinland audit framework and assessment. The audit is covering topics like EHS, resource usage, emission, and product stewardship. The initial audit will take, depending on factory size, between 8 days. By looking at the individual and overall scoring of the production site, The expert can evaluate and assess the level 3 compliance of the production facility.
Thank you, Stefan, for those insights and also the explanation. I suppose we still have open questions concerning how we decide the evaluation criteria for the different chemical products, and also importantly, how a wet processing mill can utilize the MRSL conformance of their inventory in order to support, let's say, their root cause analysis activity. For this, my colleague Dr. Hoyan will share an overview along with a couple of case studies. An, please take over.
MRSL level 1, we perform the testing. First, we need to review of documentation, perform the testing, and use the analytical report. First, we need to perform the assessment, and to do the assessment, we need the exact product name and description of chemical formulation, the item number, manufacturing company name as declared on the product of the packaging, address of the manufacturing site, illustration of article on the packaging, information of relevant use in the product, and material safety dataset SDS. If we perform full MRSL list testing, the cost is very high and time to finish is long. To reduce this, ZDHC created the SMART testing guideline. SMART testing guideline depends on the use of the product. Example, auxiliary and finishing agent for fiber and yarns, pretreatment agent, finishing assistant, etc. Depends on the use of product. Some mandatory tests are required. Additional tests could be added depending on actual formulation. Some products there is no specific guideline. The test will depend on the real product type and real formulations. Most of factory is doing wastewater testing, and we can use SMART testing guideline as a tool to find the root cause. Example, with the wastewater testing results, we can find the APEO. And reference to the SMART testing guideline, APEO could be appear in some products, such as the sizing agent. And we can take the sizing agent product, perform the testing, and see if the APEO in this product or not. Take a look in the wastewater data. We can see 3 chemical groups, APEOs, halogenated solvent, and PFC fail more than other chemical groups. And again, reference to the SMART testing guideline, you can see a lot of products could be the source of such chemical group. Example, for PFC, you can see that lubricant could be the source for PFC. And we can focus in analysis of the lubricant in the factory for further investigations. There are 3 main steps in chemical assessment and testing. The first step is SDS verification. We will perform the SDS and TDS check and also check more information with applicant. The second step is chemical formulation assessment. In this step, we will verify if product classification is reasonable. And we will check any substance belong to MRSL list in the formulation. Any impurity of the substance in the MRSL list can be appear. And we refer to the SMART testing guideline to make the test plan. Sometimes in the test plan, some specific tests could be added depending on the real formulation, such as the VOC or heavy metal. And the last step is reporting. We will issue the report, and in the report, all MRSL tests are covered. All specific MRSL limits are met, and we create the compliance summary report and submit to ZDHC. For project timeline, there is 7 main steps. The first step, customer need to send to us the application form with all information about the product. In Triple after receive the product and also the application form, in the first step, we will review the product information, if it's enough or not. Example like the name of the product, SDS, TDS, type of chemical. After then, our assessor will do the data verification, and also we can do the TDS check if it's available. Compare with the smart testing guideline, then we will prepare the testing plan. The test plan and the product will be sent to the lab team, and the lab team will perform the chemical pretreatment, sample pretreatment, and perform the analysis. After results is ready, they will send to reporting team. Reporting team will prepare the report and send to ZDHC. Here are some case studies. Case study 1, we received the application form and full information from the customer. Also, customer informed us the use of chemicals is fastness improver. Based on this information, we select the category finishing assistant. We do chemical assessment for formulation and also perform the SDS review. And we show that all components are in the ingredient and total percentage is 100%. Checking with customer, and they confirm that there is no other chemical except the chemical in the ingredient. Based on the assessment and information from customer, we select the test cost 1.3.10 after treatment agent for fastness improvement. And case study number 2. In this case, we received the application form and MSDS from the customer. However, the MSDS is incomplete. You can see there are 2 compounds in the formulations. One is secondary alcohol ethoxylase, and the other one is the special mineral substance. However, applicants do not know what special mineral substance are. And also, some of these 2 compounds is only 60%. And when we check with applicants, they do not know if what is the rest of 40% of the formulations. Because we don't have enough information, so in this case, we cannot apply the smart testing, and we must apply the full MRSL testing.
Thank you, Dr. An, for this overview of the assessment process and also for the case studies. What we've discussed today is primarily for activity 1, that is MRSL compliance. But we've also seen how MRSL compliance is validated during BEPI audits and HIG verifications. Finally, as with any other process, the quality of inputs also decides the impact on the output, that is the finished garment. But also the NPO, or the non-product output, such as wastewater and air emissions. Should MRSL parameters be detected in the wastewater, well-maintained chemical inventory with MRSL conformance information via, let's say, the ChemCheck and the InCheck report could be a useful resource for root cause analysis then. All right then. Finally, based on your manufacturing location or that of your supplier, here are quick contact points along with an overview of our services in the various geographies. We've heard today Mr. Stefan Tumpner. His team, of course, manages projects for chemical manufacturers and also other detox topics in Western Europe. Additionally, his leadership of the Global Technical Competence Center in Tuvrinen ensures that knowledge is shared within the group and that we have a harmonized assessment process. We also heard Dr. An. His team takes care of all detox-related aspects for manufacturers in Asia Pacific, primarily focusing on Vietnam, but also Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Japan. In addition to the publicly available information about the chemicals industry, we utilized information compiled by the ZDHC team as part of their webinar for the Chemical Gateway and also for MRSL 2.0. At the same time, information from Greenpeace Detox was relevant to capture some of the stakeholder expectations. With that, we will be addressing many of the questions that you all have raised now. All right then. Thank you for patiently listening to what our colleagues had to share. We start off going through the questions that we've received. Meanwhile, you can continue to type in additional questions or comments that you may have via the chat widget, which looks like a message. So we start off with one which has been asked quite often, that is if we will be sharing the presentation that we use today. Yes, all of you will receive a link to the recorded version along with a possibility to download the resources within 1 day. Then we have a few questions coming in from chemical manufacturers. So one of them is if there is any change in testing requirements in MRSL version 2.0 compared to version 1.1. Stefan, do you want to take that up?
Yes, I can. So basically, I think we should differentiate here. So the testing methodology remains the same, but there are additional chemicals added, as I said before, about 60 different chemicals. So this can have a huge impact, as the 60 chemicals are not only related to new substance classes, also there have been adjustments on the existing substance classes. So this could have an impact on testing version 1 to version 2. And I know, Rakesh, maybe correct me, there's also a question regarding this, or?
That's correct, yeah. That goes into the area of the follow-up question. That is, if a chemical manufacturer is requesting assessment of certain chemical products for level 1, and then a group of other chemical products for level 3, what is the difference in the test report and what information needs to be uploaded to the ZDHC chemical gateway? Perhaps you can continue, Stefan, with this.
Yes, so basically I would like to split this question. So we have level 1 and level 3. Level 1 is the assessment on the chemical product, the chemical formulation. So level 3 contains level 2 and level 1. So the assessment of the chemical product in level 1 and level 3 might be identical. There are some slight differences, I have to say, depending on the type of chemical formulation you have, also depending on what kind of information we as a third-party testing institute receive. There, as I said in my presentation, there are different methodologies of assessing a chemical here. It can be done by a full disclosure of all ingredients, or it just can be done, on the other hand side, by a chemical testing. There can also be a combination of both, but this depends on the chemical supplier and maybe also on the information he has. Sometimes, as we know from Asian regions, it's very hard to get an NDA, so a non-disclosure agreement, signed with the supplier. Also for Turkey region, we know this. So the approach then will be a total different approach for chemical testing than we would do for full disclosure. And this can also have an impact on the testing costs in the end, or the assessment costs, let's call it like this. And for level 3, somehow it also depends on how many production facilities I have. I have one chemical, and the chemical is produced in 5 production facilities, or it's only produced in 1. So the audit also would be then conducted in 5 facilities and not only 1 facility. I hope I could answer some questions. Yes?
Yes, thank you. Let's continue on that point. So the situation being described is that a manufacturer has applied for level 1 conformance and level 3 conformance. Is there a difference in the format of the output report, which is given by Tubreinlen? And is there a difference in what is uploaded onto ZDHC or what can be downloaded as a ChemCheck report?
So basically, to talk about the upload to the chemical gateway, it is only a one-page certificate we will create for the supplier. Then he can upload this, and by a new system from ZDHC now, we as a testing institute need to approve that this certificate is issued by us, and then the product will be automatically approved by the system as level 1, level 2, or level 3 compliant. The first question, going back here, is we have different steps. We have one step, which is the chemical assessment of the product, and then we have an audit for level 3. So there will be two separate documents created by TÜV, an audit report and a chemical test report, combined also in a certificate issued by TÜV Rheinland. So the reports, chemical and audit report, can remain at supplier side. So there is no need to upload it to Chemical Gateway. But what needs to be uploaded to Chemical Gateway is the certificate issued by TÜV Rheinland showing compliance to level 1 and level 2, or level 3, for example.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Stefan. Then Anne, there is another question coming in. We looked at the smart testing grids, and the question is that the manufacturer or the mill which is contacting you, they have only information about the usage of the chemical and the main ingredient. Will your team be able to apply smart testing then?
Sure. So as we said, Rakesh, sorry.
Yes, I was wondering if Dr. Ahn can take it up from the
Okay.
operational project. Yeah, a moment. Hoyan? Dr. Ahn? Okay, perhaps he has a challenge with his connection. Stefan, maybe you can take it up then, yeah?
Yes. So basically, as I said, it always depends on the type of information we get. If we get less information, we have to do a deeper assessment of the chemical product. And looking at the chemical classes added in the MRSL or related to MRSL, UV stabilizer, somehow you will not use these for specific type of product. So therefore, we can really cut or assess the MRSL only to specific product types. So this is also somehow related to the smart testing grid issued by ZDHC, where different stakeholders from industry, from brand side, gave comment on what is the intention here to find these chemicals inside a chemical product or chemical formulation. So therefore, I think we need to do an assessment. It's not like simple said, and this is something I really don't like, test everything. This will increase the testing cost. Sure, on somehow it's possible to do it, but the testing cost will increase. At the moment, there is another possibility from a technical point of view to offer a kind of screening approach, where we say if we don't get any information from the supplier, only he knows that he is using this type of chemical for washing or maybe for finishing. Maybe we know the percentage of ingredients. Sometimes even this is not easy to get. Then we can offer a kind of screening, which includes random testing of all 210 chemicals.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Stefan.
But again, it really depends, and I think it's always necessary to talk to the supplier and talk to the chemical formulator here about what is the best approach for him.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. The next one, I think, Hoyan, Dr. Ahn, you've heard this several times, so maybe you can answer. The question is that if there is an RSL report, will that be acceptable for MRSL conformance? Okay, then we wait until Dr. Ahn is able to connect back in. Stefan, perhaps you can also take this one, yeah?
Yes, it's not possible. clearly to say. So MRSL relates to the raw materials, so the chemical formulation which are used for dyeing, for finishing. The product, the RSL testing relates to the finished product. So there are total different concentrations here. So I can say if I have everything in my, if I've tested the MRSL, that there can be a connection to the RSL. But it's hard to say because I cannot find anything in my product. I didn't use any, I do use a compliant MRSL substance, so that's not possible. Sure, there's a connection because the chemicals are the same somehow, but it's not possible to say because I have full compliance to RSL that I have full compliance to MRSL. Because also what you have to say is during the process, certain chemicals will be washed out maybe, or maybe even they will be, somehow, they're not connected to the fiber anymore. So sure, you will not find it in the final product, but maybe you can find it then in the wastewater because like NPOs, which are a emulsifier, they somehow you cannot find them in the final product, but you will find them in the wastewater. So there's then also an indication that something was used inside the production which contains NPO.
Right. Okay. Perfect. We also have another one coming in which says it's from a chemical manufacturer. They say that when we get level 3 by blue sign, the products will be uploaded automatically to the ZDHC chemical gateway. Do you have a similar approach or do we need to upload certificates? So the current approach is in the initial phase of launch, there were a couple of programs which are directly connected to ZDHC chemical gateway, and you're right, blue sign is one of them. Now, the process that ZDHC has started is for the newly approved verifiers or conformance indicators. There's a connection being made. So every time the documents are prepared, the verifier, the conformance verifier, has to indicate information in the platform, and then step by step, there will be an automatic data exchange which will take place. All right. Then there is another one, and I think, Stefan, you could also take it up. The question is that a chemical manufacturer, they say that they are interested to test several of their products for level 3. What kind of information needs to be disclosed from their side? So I think we have to address both, the product information and the site information. But Stefan, can you elaborate, please?
So again, as said, we have to look at two sides. We have to look at the chemical product, chemical formulation, which therefore it depends on what kind of information the supplier has. If you talk about 200 chemicals, to test everything fully or even partly, it's quite cost intensive. So there can be some risk assessment being done. So it always depends also on the fact full disclosure, no full disclosure of the chemical formulation. Are there any other chemical test reports available? So really, it's hard to say that there is one way. There are 4, 5, 6, 7 ways, possible ways, to conduct such an assessment. For the audit, sure, and as I said this before, is there have been the auditor will request specific products from the chemical supplier or chemical producer about HSE, about wastewater, about waste in general. And I think these documents should be provided in advance. They will be evaluated off-site and as well for level 3 then on-site. So there is a demand. I can see this. And also later we will create a document and shared with the supplier who is interested in about what kind of information he needs to provide to conduct a level 3 and even level 1 then.
Okay, thank you. And we have a couple of questions deeply related to the operational aspects. These are for you, Dr. Ahn. The first question is, when the chemical manufacturer, they mentioned that they will provide all information to TÜV Rheinland team. How does TÜV Rheinland ensure that the information provided about the ingredients is kept confidential. Dr. An, are you able to hear us, and can you take it up?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, first, thanks on to join the seminar. So these questions that we got a lot from the supplier, because all the supplier factory want to keep the confidential about the formulations. And we always discuss with customer that if they can provide us a full information, and we will sign the non-disclose agreement. It means that we sign the contract to be sure that we will not give the full information of your product to anyone. We just keep for assessment and make the evaluation only. And then you can be sure that your formulation will not be given to anyone. Yeah.
And there is one more for you. And the question is
Rakesh,
that when...
Maybe, yes. Rakesh, can I say something again also for this point? So the non-disclosure and the full disclosure of chemical ingredients is something which is necessary for the cosmetic product assessment since 5-6 years. So it's nothing new to the chemical products to disclose certain information of their product. So for evaluating and assessing a chemical product like a cosmetic, it is necessary. And so far, also from our testing experience in the cosmetic industry, this is not an issue at all. So every cosmetic producer is able to disclose all necessary information. The problem is that for the textile supply chain, this is quite new. And some people are really, really afraid of giving information like trade secrets out to a third party. But I can assure that everything which is under an NDA, and this is also our reliability as a testing institute, and it's part of our testing accreditation, is kept confidential. Just only to give also the legal aspect here. And I think if we would not follow here, then we would be reliable, and this is not in our interest, also in the interest of our brand protection program.
Right, absolutely. We are also audited, yeah? All auditors, all inspection organizations, we are also on the accreditation, and data security is one important part of it, along with the requirements in Europe. So they are all checked to make sure that we follow the adequate procedures. And we have contingency measures for that. Yes.
Yeah, and also that is one of the very important points of the ISO 17025. That's on the lab who perform the test. They're not allowed to give information about the sample that they receive to any other party. Yeah.
Right. And please stay on, because there's one more which I think you can answer nicely. And the question is, how does your site advise the chemical manufacturer on how to choose the test type? Which testing to choose for the chemical formulations? How do you give this advice to the client? Can you take it up?
Yeah. So normally when we got the information from the applicant, they with us mostly they just know the use of the chemical, and some probably very briefly information about formulation. So to prepare the test plan, normally we need the full information of the formulations. So if the customer can give us the full information first, we can refer to the use of the chemical. Also, we have to take a look in other components, because some some ingredient can be used for multi-purpose. Even you said that you want to use for one purpose, for one use only. However, it can be used for other purpose as well. So in this case, we have to take a look and considering if all the tests need to be added, and then we can make a quite flexible test plan, not only based on the use of the chemical of production.
Right. Okay. Thank you, An. I see that we are only 1 minute to the scheduled time that we are arranged, but I think there's a couple of small points or important questions that you can support us with. One of them is with regards to the report. Will there be any pass or fail result?
Yes. If you take a look in the MRSL list, they have the limit of X parameter. Example like SCCP, MCCP, APO, or limiter. X have the limit, right. And based on the limit, we have to make the evaluation. Of course, in this case, one fail is mean whole product will be fail. So if all pass, it means the product could be passed. Also, I would like also mention that sometimes for the main component we own pass, but sometimes just some very minor like the heavy metal could be failed. In such case, the whole report still fail. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Well, let's take one more. The question is, if there are any points concerning air emission. We showed this in our presentation. It was displayed, and what the requirements are coming from a chemical manufacturer based out of Turkey. So I'll take it up. As you rightly saw, that there is going to be a requirement with regards to air emissions. What happened last year was there was a task team formulated within ZDHC which looked at research in terms of what parameters are being addressed by different legal requirements. And the outcome of this resulted into a first draft for point sources, non-point sources. In the next couple of months, you'll be able to see what the requirements are for the initial rollout of air emissions. And while we have already utilized our time, one of the last points is that we understand that the current situation with COVID-19 is tricky and challenging, and that many companies are looking at conserving cash. So with regards to this, within TÜV Rheinland, we have a small offer from us until 30th of June. Should you have any new projects prior to 30th of June, then there is a promotional offer going on. Please reach out to one of the contact points mentioned in the webinar. As long as you have registered for the webinar, you will be eligible to get that discount. As next steps, we will be collecting all the questions, also the ones that we were not able to address right now. We will document them. And tomorrow, all of you all will receive an email with a link where you all will be able to access the webinar material, but you all will also be able to download the questions and answers. Then until then, I want to thank, for now, I want to thank our colleagues, Stefan Tumpner, Dr. Ahn, but also our colleagues who organized the webinar, Ryan and Lian. Thank you very much. Then for all of you, thank you for taking time from your schedules. Please stay safe, take care, and good luck. And we'll hear each other soon again with the next webinars.